Welcome one and all. Super Wednesdays here in the Holy Land, Holy Apple, Holy Hilltop, and the Holy Synagogue on the hilltop. We're on the 22nd day of the month of Cheshvan, year 5780. Today's class, with God's help, is titled Banning Circumcision. Any truth to it? Question mark. Banning circumcision. Any truth to it? The reason why I'm tackling the subject now at this time of the year is twofold. Number one, we've been discussing recently about Abraham and circumcision, circumcising his family members, if it's Ishmael or if it's Isaac, and his community. And along with that, we're a week away from the month of Kislev, which of course is the month of the holiday of Hanukkah, where the circumcision was banned by the Syrian Greeks. So putting the two ingredients, Abraham, circumcision, with the holiday of Hanukkah coming up, which so many Jews love to celebrate. So it's good to take a time out and look into the movements around the world trying to ban circumcision, whether it's in America or whether it's in Europe. So put on a few seatbelts. We're going to go for quite a ride. Let's start in Europe. Denmark. The Danish parliament is to consider whether to become the first country to ban boys being circumcised after a petition forced lawmakers to debate the issue. A citizen's petition that called for the introduction of a minimum age of 18 years old for circumcision to protect children's fundamental rights reached 50,000 signatures on Friday, taking it beyond the threshold at which it must be discussed in the Danish parliament. The defense minister in Denmark, named Claus Hjort Frederiksen, appeared unenthusiastic. I think the political risk is enormous, he told reporters, going on to cite fears that the issue could provoke outside interference outside their country. One may risk that it suddenly begins to explode on social media. What he's saying basically is, when you get to the bottom line, he's worried because our mazal, our luck is that also the Muslims have circumcision, and when you step on a Muslim toe, you're going to hear a loud cry, and that's going to like rock. It's going to be like an earthquake. So it's interesting how God sets up his chess pieces on the table, and here we have the fact that once again, listen to this guy is the defense minister. What's he connected to circumcision? He's not the health minister. He's the defense minister. So he's worrying, like in his mind, these bells are ringing, ding, 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 ding. All these bells are going off, and he said, not a good move. So he's worried about the political risk. Other parliamentarians, however, were in favor of the ban. It will put children's rights ahead of their parents' religious rights, said Nasser Kader, the spokesman on human rights and legal affairs for the Conservative Party. There's too much emphasis on parents' religious and cultural rights, Kader said. For me, the issue here is children's rights. We have been a pioneer country, this is Denmark, in many other areas. For example, we have been the first movers of the homosexual rights, and we are very proud of it. However, same is not true with children's rights, he added. So that's Denmark. Let's move on. Iceland. Iceland is poised to become the first European country to outlaw male circumcision. Seems like there is this contest. Who is going to be first? Is it going to be Denmark or is it going to be Iceland? There's this, contest going on here. A bill currently before the Icelandic parliament proposes a penalty of up to 6 years in prison for anyone carrying out circumcision other than medical reasons. Better be careful over there. 6 years in the can. Critics say the move, which has sparked alarm amongst religious leaders across Europe, would make life for Jews and Muslims in Iceland unsustainable. We are talking about children's rights, not about freedom of belief. Everyone has the right to believe in what they want, but the rights of children come above the right to belief. Nordic countries had well-deserved reputations for promoting human rights, she added. If Iceland backs this, I think other countries will follow suit. In America, there's a group called Blood-Stained Men. They go around during the course of a year. They go around to 60 different states, cities, and they demonstrate. It's extremely graphic, extremely in-your-face kind of demonstrations. A demonstration you wouldn't necessarily want yourself or your children to pass by them. So we will show you now a few demonstrations and few of their signs that they carry in order for you to begin understanding what we're talking about here.
Well, we've spent years debating abortion and birth control and a variety of women's health issues, but we don't often see people carrying signs and rallying around men.
That's true. But a group who is very easy to spot has made a stop in the Twin Cities to ignite the debate over whether boys should be circumcised. Here's photojournalist Ferlin Webster.
Protect the next generation from a cruel amputation! Woo!
It's not often you'll see a group of people protesting for men's health rights.
Stand up for yourselves! Don't put up with this crap!
And to be certain, it's not often you'll see this.
So, Brother K.
Yes, sir.
I'm out here and I'm looking and I have to ask, what are you wearing?
I'm wearing a blood stain on my pants. That blood stain is a symbol of the wound right underneath my pants that I have carried all my life.
Brother K is the founder of bloodstainedmen.com. The organization believes circumcision is mutilation, and they are using shock value to spread their message.
Come on, American men! Let's fight back!
I see you guys are obviously trying to make a statement, but it doesn't seem like it's like a hoax, so it seems like you're very serious about this.
Oh yeah. Well, I call our appearance shock treatment for the American public. It's shocking, yes, but what we're doing to American babies is 1 million times more shocking.
There are people on both sides, obviously, with this issue, and there are people going to talk about the benefits of circumcision. What do you think about that?
There are absolutely no benefits to circumcision.
Well, let's take a look at that. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC both believe the health benefits of circumcision outweigh the risks of procedure. That said, it's certainly not mandatory.
Don't leave your son out of the intact generation!
In fact, the number of parents choosing circumcision has steadily declined in the U.S. Back in the 70s and 80s, about 8 out of every 10 boys were circumcised. Today, that number is just 5 or 6 out of 10.
I just believe that circumcision is super barbaric and it's mutilation. God knows how to make babies. He doesn't make mistakes.
The men protesting for change are getting some support from parents like Alyssa Carlson, who opted out of the procedure for her child. And that, Brother K says, is why he travels the country, making a point while making some people uncomfortable, so that at least will make people talk.
Protect the next generation!
We are taking free speech to the max, but it's peaceful and it's legal.
Woo!
Certainly controversial.
Yes.
And a lot of people might be upset by those images.
It is tough to see.
It is tough to see. And it just, back in the day, at abortion rallies, they post awful pictures
True.
there as well. Tough to see. It's not something that you see on TV every day. I think it's something that's unusual. But nowadays, most parents choose to circumcise, for religious or cultural reasons. But we talked about the health benefits in that story.
Right.
So what are they? Research has shown that it can minimally reduce the chances of things like urinary tract infections and transmission of STDs later in life, and reduce the risk of penile cancer. It has also been proven, especially in Africa, to lessen the transmission of HIV. Now, all that said, opponents still believe that there's an ethical debate with this because it is a baby having the procedure who doesn't have the option to make the decision for himself. So, two very different sides to this, and it's just not something we're used to hearing in the mainstream media.
And religious and cultural, in the Jewish community, it's celebrated, and we've talked about it in mom Facebook groups. This is a common discussion. Should I or shouldn't I? And I think there's a lot of societal pressure now. What decision do I make?
One way or the other.
Yeah.
We'll continue to see this definitely play out going in the future. So.
Okay, the bottom line of this group, Bloodstained Men, is, as you could tell by their signs of circumcision is sex abuse, circumcision is cruelty, circumcision is rape. So you get the gist of what their direction here is. We know that in the time of the Syrian Greeks, in the time of Hanukkah, one of the major 3 decrees against the Jewish people was the ban on circumcision. And though more than 2,000 years have passed since that ban on circumcision, as the world turns, we see that nothing has really changed. There are still many forces out there that are trying to ban circumcision. They're out there. And it's important as a Jew to be able, what it says in the ethics of our fathers, Dama lashiv la'apikoros, know how to answer a scoffer. The idea here is that a Jew must first, before going out and facing the nations of the world, first a person has to face themselves in the mirror. Know when the Talmud says know how to answer a scoffer, it's not talking about Joe next door, or it's talking about me. I have to give myself answers. So the question is, first of all, is there any truth? We know that the Torah tells us that nothing can exist in the world if there is not some iota percentage, some minimal percentage of truth. Because anything that is false cannot stand up. If you look at the word false, sheker, it has no legs. The word truth is standing in Hebrew. It's standing on, all the letters stand on a foundation, on a base. Truth has a base to it. But false, it just falls down. So it has to, in order to continue to exist, there has to be some form of truth involved. There has to be some kind of truth involved. So let's try to look and understand what truth, what 0.000.1 something percent truth is there in this banning of the circumcision movement. This will be an important lesson for us to understand what Torah is all about, what Judaism expects and God expects from all of us. Hopefully this class will give us a clear vision, understanding what foundation and base Judaism is coming when we're talking about the commandment of circumcision. So, let's take it from the top, as they say. Abraham, we've been talking in the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about Abraham, how he was the first one commanded by God at the age of 99 to circumcise. He took his people that converted, according to the Zohar Kadosh. There were 1 million converts that Abraham and Sarah were successful in converting, amazing number. And there was like this tremendous movement for circumcision at the time. When we look at the forefathers, we know that each of them represent a pillar of one of the foundations of the world. So Jacob represents the pillar of truth, or Torah. Isaac represents strict judgment, courage, bravery, harshness. And Abraham represents kindness. This we see, there's a verse, we say it in our prayers every day in the morning. It's in the end, the last verse of the book, the prophet Micah, maybe they say in English. The last verse, Titen emet liYaakov chesed lAvraham. You've given the characteristic trait of truth to Jacob and the characteristic trait of kindness to Abraham. So Abraham stands on the foundation, one of the foundations of Judaism, of kindness. In fact, it says that a Jew who is not kind, there's a big question mark to see if that person is really a Jew. There are three signs that show a person is Jewish. It's easy to remember in Hebrew. You remember the word gever. Like in modern slang Hebrew, it's like if you're a macho man, you're a gever. So that's 3 letters, Gimel Bet Resh. That's Gemilut Chasadim, kindness. Bet is Baishanim, people that are shy. Jews have the characteristic of being shy. And Rachmanim, merciful. So those are the 3 foundations that Judaism stands upon. So, we all know that if we look at ourselves, we all stand on 2 legs. And God forbid, none of us should have to be crippled and be on 1 leg. Because it doesn't matter if you're missing a left leg or a right leg, you're still crippled, whether it's the right or left leg. So, in Judaism, the right side represents kindness. The left side represents strict judgment or kindness to only those that are worthy. Bravery. So, in order to be a complete Jew, or a complete person, you always have to stand on 2 legs. If you're on 1 leg, then you're crippled. Then you're handicapped. So Abraham is in a dangerous position here. Why is that? Because he's standing on this 1 leg. And his 1 leg, which is kindness, is extremely dangerous to have that only 1 leg of kindness. Why? There's an amazing verse in the Torah. It could be found in the portion of Kedoshim in the book of Leviticus. It's, if I'm not mistaken, chapter 20.
From Yom Kippur, yes.
Right? Very good. Ephraim, if I had a sardine, I would throw it your way. 20, verse 2. And it says there an amazing thing. It talks about illicit sexual relations. And it says, it uses the word of kindness, chesed. Why? Because if you think about it, just recently in San Francisco, there's a new DA there, district attorney. And he's for his flag, he just won the elections there in San Francisco. His platform was to legalize the selling of sex, that soliciting sex should not be illegal. That's one of his flags. So you could come to people on the streets and you could sell yourself on the street in San Francisco. So if you think about it, prostitution is a form of chesed that's gone extreme, which means it's selling themselves to everyone. When a woman and a man marry each other, the males cut off all females, and the females cut off all the males. It's just me and you, baby. That's all there is. And that's Jewish love. And there's prostitution, which is called chesed, because it's giving them, selling themselves to everybody. The price is right, whatever, how much you got the money, will be there. So this is extremely dangerous. In fact, Rav Chaim Vital tells us that water represents kindness, chesed. In the Torah, according to the Kabbalistic explanation, water always represents chesed and a person having a good time and pampering themselves. So, for example, when we see Yishmael in the Torah, he's always around water. And that's why it says in the Gemara that there are 10 levels of prostitution in the world. And 9, the Arabians, the Arabs, took 9 out of the 10. So it's very interesting because water, as we said, represents this pampering of oneself, and tanugim, good times, let the good times roll, and equals prostitution. And that's what it says in the Torah about the Arabians. So the idea is we all have to strive to stand on 2 legs. Right leg is being the leg of kindness, represents kindness, and left represents limiting that kindness. As we said, marriage is limiting our love to a specific spouse. So we have to stand on those 2 legs. If you're a parent, you need those 2 legs. You have to be on one hand, you have to be very kind and nice. On the other hand, you have to have limitations. If you don't have limitations, if you don't put limitations on a kid, then the kid goes wild. And we're in big trouble. So we need those 2 legs. How do we balance Abraham? Very interesting. We know that Abraham, according to the Mishnah, he had 10 tests. And look at 3 of them, 3 of the tests. God came into the world. When somebody goes extreme on one characteristic trait, it's very dangerous. So you got to be balanced. You got to go to the other extreme in order to balance yourself, to be somewhere in the middle of the road. So how do we balance Abraham with his abundance, no limitation of kindness? I mean, Abraham's out there praying for the people of Sodom. They weren't the nicest people in the world. They did a lot of cruel things. Abraham is out there praying. So how do we balance Abraham? God sends him 3 tests, which are the exact opposite of kindness. Number 1, he loved his son. His first son was Ishmael, father of the Arab nation. And he, at the age of 15, Ishmael, he was God via Sarah. Sarah told Abraham to expel Ishmael and his mother Hagar from their home. It was very difficult for Abraham to go through with that. He contacted God. I don't know exactly what the number is to contact God, whatever that number is. And God tells him, whatever Sarah tells you, listen to it. So that's number one, balance. If we're sending Abraham the opposite. Number two is the circumcision. Abraham is commanded at the age of 99 to perform a circumcision. Let's look at how that balances Abraham. We are told in Tanchuma, portion of Vayera, and it's the third subject. Last week we spoke the first verse that God appeared to Abraham in a place called Mamre. Today, it still exists. When you're going to Hebron, on the way there's a place called Elonim Mamre. That is where God appeared to Abraham. So the Torah asks, our sages ask, why did God appear to Abraham in all places? Abraham's been around. Why did God choose the place of Mamre to appear, prophet, to give prophecy over? Now this was the highest level. Abraham received various levels of communication with God before. For example, when he went to the land of Israel, it says, Vayomer Hashem, God spoke. But here, this is big time. This is, God appeared. This is prime time. This is a different level altogether. So this is our question. Why did God choose this place specifically? There must be something about that place. There's a point here to learn. So listen to this, very interesting. Abraham had three friends, three close friends. One guy, his name was Aner, the other guy was Eshkol, and the third guy was Mamre. And God tells Abraham that it's time to have a circumcision, and all of his followers have to have a circumcision. And he's doing a survey, Abraham. He's doing a survey, he's asking, what do you think about it? It's unusual. God told you, do you take a survey? Do we go according to the majority of opinion of your friends? I mean, is this PC, being politically correct? I'm asking my friends what they tell me I'm going to do. We'll see why that is. Why did Abraham turn to his friends? So he comes up to his friends, and he asks his first friend, Aner. And Aner tells him, listen, are you nuts to go ahead with the circumcision? Man, you gotta be jiving. He says, once it gets out that you did this surgical procedure, people are going to understand, all your enemies, right? You went and you had these battles against nations. They're looking to avenge your victories. Once they hear that you went through this procedure, this surgical procedure, they're going to be all over you. You're going to be finished. They're going to know you're weak and hurting. They're going to take advantage of that time, like the Yom Kippur War. Why did the Arabs attack the Jews on Yom Kippur? Because during the year, that's the soft part of the Jewish calendar where, Jews and fasting doesn't go well. If you look today, whenever there's a class, there's always food. In order to draw in the people, you gotta have food, man. A lot of people just come for the food, not for the class. I must say here, though, in the Holy Apple, we don't have any of that. People that come here, it's for the sake of heaven. Ain't no food here. Just a little bit of coffee here. So here it's more for the sake of heaven. Okay. So that's his first friend, Aner's opinion. Goes to the second friend, Mr. Eshkol. He says, what do you think? He says, are you nuts? You're going to do a circumcision at your age? You're 99 years old. If you were a young kid, if you were a teenager, then we have something to talk about. But you are going to bleed to death. This group, the blood-stained men group, they walk around with this like red paint or something on their garments. We'll just leave it at that. On their garments. So basically, where did they pick this up from? From Eshkol. Eshkol says you're going to bleed to death. You're doing this procedure, you're going to bleed to death, you're going to die. You're going to die. Don't do it. He goes up to last friend, Mamre. What do you think about this? God told me to perform a circumcision. Listen, God has been with you. He's been on your side all these years. He's gone to bat for you, and you're asking questions. Just do it. You thought that Nike came up with that slogan? No. Many, many thousands of years ago, it's just do it is actually from Mamre. Just do it. Okay. What is Abraham asking questions to his friends? God told you to do something, you do it. Whether your friends agree or not, whether it's PC or not. So the Anaf Yosef commentator says an amazing thing. Abraham didn't need to contact his friends. He knew what he was going to do. But Abraham, when he received the commandment to circumcise himself, this commandment began a different view of life for Abraham. Up until now, up until the age of 99, his total view of the world was just kindness and being merciful and love. When he gets the commandment by God to do something which is the opposite of love, kindness, being merciful, taking a knife and cutting up yourself, that's not exactly the cup of tea Abraham is used to. So this commandment is beginning to open the eyes of Abraham, that he has to balance himself. He's in danger. He has to balance himself here. So he begins to look at who his closest associates are. And he says, you know what? I'm going to bounce this idea off of them. I want to see. Maybe it's time, if they don't agree with God's commandment, it's time for me to leave these friends and go somewhere else. That was his idea. He didn't have any doubt whether he was going to perform circumcision or not. He wanted to give a test to his friends to see if these are the friends that we want to hang out with or not. Because as the Torah teaches us in the Mishnah, that a Jew is commanded, as we say in the morning prayers, God, separate me. Create distance between me, that my neighbors, my friends, should all be God-fearing friends and good friends. I'll never forget, once I heard from one of the leaders of a settlement. He told me, Yehuda, all you need is one good friend. And that one good friend could save a person. When you're growing up and you're a kid, teenager, before teenager, you don't need 5 friends, great friends, 4, 3, you need one. If you have one good, solid, holy friend, that one friend could save a person. Okay, I've seen that before. So, that is what the Torah tells us. Abraham's not used to that. Abraham is used to hanging out with everybody. He doesn't, put a stop sign. He's one of those arrows like traveling straight ahead. He's the green light, Abraham. He gets together with everybody. He's batting for Sodom and Gomorrah. But now he gets his commandment, and there's a shift, tremendous shift in Abraham. His glasses have changed. He sees the world in a different manner. He wants to check out his friends. So the Anaf Yosef tells us that after this test, he separated himself from Aner and Eshkol, and he only remained friendly in contact with Mamre. Amazing thing. That's what he says. That's what he was doing. Now listen to this. According to the book Seder Yaakov, page 512, the Seder Yaakov is an amazing thing. You know what Abraham's question was? Abraham's question to Mamre was the following. He didn't ask him whether he should perform the circumcision or not. His question was more specific. His question was, should I, of course, according to Mamre, there was no question here whether he should perform it or not. It was obvious to Mamre. But the question was, according to Abraham, he wasn't certain whether he should do it in public or he should do it in private. What's the problem? What's the question? It's a big question here. The Seder Yaakov in his book, in his commentary, says an amazing line. Abraham and Sarah represented a tremendous movement in the world. They were successful in bringing, as we said, according to the Zohar, Secrets of the Torah, 1 million converts. Their message, the message of Abraham and Sarah, was always a message of love, of kindness, of being merciful. Peace, love. Remember those shirts? Make love, not war. Yeah, that was the idea. So, the commentator said, "Of course, it's an amazing thing." Abraham was thinking, "Of course, I'm going to do what God told me, but I'm leaning to do it that nobody will know." Why? Because Abraham understood that if he followed through with the circumcision, he could lose all of his followers, because they joined Abraham because he came with a message of love, not a message of cutting yourself up, not a message of blood-stained men. That was his question. And Mamre says, do it in public. Don't do it in private. Do it in public. And that exactly, if you look in the words of the Torah, it says that Abraham observed this commandment in midday, in front of all, in order to sanctify God's name. And he was taking a tremendous, tremendous chance of losing his following, because now this was not PC in that time. Think about it today. Unfortunately, you see many times people that are balei tshuva, people that are newcomers to Judaism, they were secular and they come back. But when you speak to them, when you talk to them, it's frightening to have a conversation with many of these people. It's really, really frightening. They continue with their same liberal, left, knee-jerk views. This Judaism to them is only one thing: love, prayer. That's what they connect to. But when they see Judaism's other side, which balances the Torah, for them, they run away from that. So in our times, as we speak now, how many people? I look at myself. I know myself, and if I wanted to, I know that I have a personality that I could be like that. I could be very, love, and that's who I could definitely be. I have it in me. I have to work on myself for the other side. For me, it's a work. Some people have the opposite. With them, they have to work on the kindness and the love kind of. They have the callous and harsh and strict judgment that they have down. The smile and the love, that's difficult for them. But it would be very easy for me to do. And I would have a lot more friends if I would just work on that natural side that I have. When I bring up this other side of Judaism, I lose a lot of friends, family, and followers. Hey, the F words. Yeah. Okay, so that was the question. Should I do it in public or not? And Abraham decided that he was going to do it in public. He understood that there could be demonstrations. The group, the blood-stained men, could come out there and demonstrate against him, or the former followers of Abraham and Sarah could come out and they could try to stop it. They could try to call the police to stop this act in public. The third balancing of Abraham was the act of circumcision, was the act of the sacrifice of Isaac. Abraham and Sarah wait 100 years till they have kids. Abraham was 100, Sarah was 90. They're waiting all these years for a kid. Finally it comes in Isaac. After 37 years that he's around, all of a sudden Abraham gets this commandment to take his son and to slaughter him on the mountain in Jerusalem where the Temple Mount would be in the future. These three tests, number one, expelling his son Ishmael and his mother Hagar. Number two, circumcision. Number three, the sacrificing of Isaac. All these three tests came to balance Abraham and to make sure he would be on 2 feet, right, left, right representing kindness, mercy, left, harsh, callous, strict judgment, kindness for those that are worthy and not for those that are not worthy. So, those are the three tests. Okay, when we speak about circumcision and these groups today in Europe that call for the banning, and they speak in the name of the children's rights above religious beliefs. Though it's interesting, I must add in parentheses that in one of the interviews with these protesters, he says a few of these issues, children abuse, etc. But in the end he says the most important thing to people, I would think the most important thing for people would be what he's talking about, children's rights. So what he says, it's sexual satisfaction. That's right, he says it right there. You could see the entire interview with this guy. That's what's most important to people, he said. I guess it's more important than children's rights. But that's what he talks about, that the circumcision causes a person to lose a certain amount of sexual desire and satisfaction, which we will talk about soon. But that's just interesting how in his line of priorities that it came out. So, cruelty, taking a knife. I personally, I've been there, done that. Thank God, at 3 of my boys and grandchildren. I've been there, and sometimes I'm chosen to be what they call the godfather. You know, not cutting a horse's head off and putting it in your bed, not that godfather. But there was recently some CNN anchor who's the son of maybe a mayor of some city. Somebody called him Fredo. Man, the guy just freaked out. Fredo, that's in The Godfather. That's like an idiot. That's an imbecile. You were calling me that?
That's CNN anchorman Chris Cuomo lashing out at a Trump supporter who insulted him.
I'll throw you down these stairs like a punk.
What was the big insult? The guy called him Fredo.
Don't insult me like that.
I didn't insult you.
You called me Fredo. You know my name's not Fredo.
He's referring, of course, to Fredo Corleone, the loser brother from The Godfather.
I can handle things. I'm smart. Not like everybody says. Like dumb, I'm smart, and I want respect.
For Cuomo, whose big brother Andrew is the governor of New York State, it's a big-time slur.
Fredo is from The Godfather. He was that weak brother.
Isn't that your
and
brother?
And they use it as an Italian aspersion. Any of you Italian? Are you Italian? It's an insult to your people. It's an insult to your people. It's like the N-word for us.
The video is going viral today to the delight of the president, who is no fan of Cuomo's.
What Chris Cuomo did was horrible. His language was horrible. He looked like a total out-of-control animal. He lost.
I mean, this guy was, he was willing to kill this person who called him Fredo, in the Godfather. Okay, so, anyways, it bothers when I'm sitting there on that chair and I'm holding. Sometimes I'm chosen to be this like Godfather, so I have to sit on the chair and hold that kid. Now, just who I am, that is not easy for me. That is not easy for me. Like, God, help me over here. I need your assistance here. Come in, bat for me. And like definitely, I'm not looking. Like, I'm like looking the other way. When somebody gets a little cut in my class or something, one of my, school kids, like putting on a Band-Aid is like, for me, that's, that's a big time. That's enough for me. So, it's like, I got to overcome that. So, they're hitting here on a certain issue, cruelty, harshness, insensitivity, callousness. There is an amount of truth, as we will see now, to that. There is a certain amount of that involved in this commandment. And that is one of the reasons that Abraham received this commandment, in order to balance him, in order to put in him, in his mechanism, this opposite side of gvura, of strength and boldness and harsh and not batting an eyelash. So we're going to say quickly, we're going to come up with 4 sources. Number 1, Ktav Sofer, in his question and answers, people sent, the Ktav Sofer was the son of the Chatam Sofer, the famous Rabbi Moshe Sofer, who was one of the leading fighters against the Reform and Conservative movement some 200 years ago. So this is his son. It was called the Ktav Sofer. And in his question and answers, it's in Yoredea, Volume 1, Question 2. So someone asks him a question, not important the question. Listen to what he says. Within the commandment of circumcision, there is a certain degree of harshness, callousness, insensitivity, cruelty, whatever word we want to use here, on our children. It is important for us to remember, though, that the act really is an act of kindness, of being merciful. As we will see as the class progresses, we will talk about the spiritual benefits. We will speak about the medical, material benefits to a person as the class progresses. But he says straight out that there is a certain streak of callousness in this commandment to take a little kid and, I don't want to use the word chop him up, but to do the process. That's number 1. Number 2, the book Padei Avraham, page 17, says the following. When we see the commandment of circumcision, it looks, and there's a certain level of cruelty, insensitivity, callousness involved in this commandment. However, if we look deeper and further into this procedure, we will see, like everything else, when the Torah commands us to do something, it might look to the naked eye, or it might look to the uninformed individual, person who's not learned, it might look as something that's cruel, but when you investigate and delve deep, you will see, he says, that as all commandments, they are to perfect the soul and the body. All commandments come to perfect the soul, but also they are beneficial for the body of a person. That's amazing. Some people might say, okay, I agree, there's some kind of spiritual benefit. Okay, but I'm not maybe necessarily so gung-ho on that issue. But I want the physical benefits. Everything in the Torah is coming for our benefit. The commandments are for our benefit. Whether we understand it or not, whether we get it or we don't get it. Spiritually, and for our spiritual well-being, and also for our physical well-being. That's the second. Third source is Avot HaRosh, in his book, commentator, says on page 76. He quotes the famous commentator, the Rashba. The Rashba says, what is love of God? When a person wants to be a person that loves God, what does that mean to love God? How do you do that? Loving of God, he says, is to surrender and to give up a person's other desires. Something that God says should not be performed or should not be taken upon. To leave that. Abraham was a perfectionist when it came to kindness. He waited 100 years to have his son, Isaac. And then God tells him to do this cruel, quote-unquote, act by slaughtering his son, Isaac, on the top of the Temple Mount. The next source, the Pninei Yecheskel, in his book, he writes on page 388. To the naked eye, he writes, the act of the person, the rabbi, that does the circumcision, or the doctor that does the circumcision, it looks to the naked eye to be an act of cruelty, harshness, insensitivity. However, if we look further, we will see exactly the opposite, that it brings tremendous blessing and benefit and mercy upon the Jewish people and the world. Last but not least, we have the commentator Ben Leoshri on page 302. If we look at the order of the Torah, we see something very interesting. At the end of the portion of Lech Lecha, we're talking about the commandment by Abraham to give a circumcision to all of his followers and all of the faculty that work with him. And then immediately after, we see that God appears to Abraham. What's the connection between the commandment to Abraham to perform the circumcision in a large scale to his followers, and then God appears to Abraham? The reason why God appears to Abraham is because Abraham was beginning to get bummed out. When Abraham began to speak and go on CNN, Fox, and all the major news and talk about this new commandment he has for his followers for the circumcision, he was getting a lot of, in the comment section, there were a lot of those asterisks when those things, or bleepers, I think they call them, beep, beep. He was getting a lot of that feedback, comments from people that were listening to his message. So he was beginning, you can imagine that, you begin to you're beginning to question yourself. Am I on the right path here? Look, I'm losing my following. I'm not so politically accepted now. I'm not, red, white, and blue and apple pie and baseball. I'm becoming I'm getting a lot of bad press here that, from this act. So therefore, in order to strengthen Abraham, God, in the highest level so far in his life, God appears, not speaks, appears to Abraham. Because Abraham was becoming a little bit beaten by the reaction of so many, he brings down here, at that time, world leaders against this circumcision. So don't think it's a new thing. Today, when we see in Europe, countries that are deliberating whether they should ban circumcision, or in America, the demonstrations, it is not new. It's as old as history. It just takes different kinds of forms as the years go by. So those are, we see that there is, we ask the question, these movements, is there any truth? It might be 0.1, but is there any truth in their call for a ban of circumcision? The answer is yes. There is 0.1% truth to this. And with God's help, we'll call it a timeout over here, and we will finish up the class. So we'll keep you in suspense, and God willing, next week we have some more videos to show you the medical benefits of the circumcision and different medical organizations, and a lot more. So stay tuned with God's help next week.